very excited, I think, just given the topic, to be able to do these kinds of things, to see how we can actually engage with an online community this way. Well, let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to this event. My name is Brent, and I'm going to be our host for this morning, afternoon, whatever time of day this is. Thank you for your patience, as we've just gotten a few tech things sorted out, but hopefully we are good to go. I'm slightly stalling in the back to make sure things are running properly. So, couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. As I've mentioned, this event is being live streamed, which means that for the most part, the camera is going to be focused on us four up here. But just be mindful that there may or may not be the back of your head in a shot. So if you're not as thrilled about that, I recommend moving to that side of the room. Other than that, we should be good to go. For what this event is going to look like, we have our three panelists. I will introduce them in a moment, and they're going to each be talking about a couple of different questions we have on our topic. For those of you who are in the room, if you've got some questions, we are going to try and do a bit of a Q&A at the end if we have time, so feel free to note them down. For those online, if you want to put it in the chat, we have people monitoring to make sure, and we can make sure those questions get asked later on in the Q&A. Our topic today is on digital wellness, hence what's on the slide behind us. Now, that is a very broad topic, and we recognize we could have talked about a lot of things. We could have looked at endless doom scrolling or AI overload, but today we've decided to focus on this idea of online community and connection. As the kind of school that Tyndale is, we have a lot of students online, we have a lot of students in person, we have a lot of different people coming from a lot of different contexts, and we just thought it'd be really interesting to have these conversations about, how do we do online community well and make sure that your wellness is taken care of in all of that. So hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have some positives, some negatives, we'll have all learned a few things, and then we can bring that back to our everyday lives. I'm just going to say a quick prayer to start us off, and then I'll introduce our panelists. Lord Jesus, thank you for today. Thank you for technology and the ability it gives us to have conversations like this, to meet with each other and to find ways to worship you in new and creative ways. We thank you for this time. We thank you for these conversations. We pray that you would bless them and that we would all learn things as we go through our time together. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Let's start by introducing our panelists. First off, on the far end, we have Dr. Paul Franks. Dr. Franks is serving a dual role on this panel. Not only has he taught philosophy here at Tyndale since 2008, meaning, fun fact, I also had him as a professor, but he also currently serves as our Vice President Academic and the Dean of Undergraduate Studies. That makes him well-suited, to speak to digital wellness, both philosophically and practically, from a place of leadership and with critical reasoning. Our second panelist is Bassma Younan, here on my right. Bassma is the Assistant Director of the Wellness Center. Hopefully you're all aware of the counseling and therapy services that the Wellness Center offers here at Tyndale, but in case you didn't know, they also have a large clientele outside of our student body. Bassma is one of the wellness practitioners that serves those external clients, plus she oversees some of our counseling interns, and she has a former career in the world of IT. So, all that to say, we're excited to hear how these things allow her to speak to our topic today. And last but not least, in the middle is Micaiah Lewis, who represents the Student Development Office as our residence coordinator. For those of you who have lived on res in the past few years, you're going to know Micaiah well and the work that she puts into building community on campus here at Tyndale. But did you know that she's also a major player behind the live streams at Bayview Glen Church's Sunday morning services? Plus, she's actually a hybrid student herself right now, pursuing an MA in Leadership, Theology, and Society part-time at Regent College. So she feels the joys and pains that some of you feel with online studies. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists for joining us today. And I hope you'd agree that we have tried to get a little bit of variety here, from professors to students to wellness practitioners and everything in between. So I'm hoping they can speak to a lot of the different aspects of what we want to cover today. But that is enough rambling from me. You didn't come here to listen to me talk. Let's get this show on the road. And we are going to start with a bit of a generic question, something that kind of just gets us going on this topic. For this one, we're going to have Bassma and Micaiah answer. Dr. Franks may have a moment towards the end if he wants. And Bassma, I'm actually going to start with you if that's okay on this one. I'm going to put this first one on the screen here, hopefully, maybe. We don't know if this clicker is going to fully cooperate. There we go. So our first question is, Bassma, in your experience, what positive and negative patterns or relationships have you seen between wellness and this increase that we're all seeing in digital connection?
Well, I think we're all aware that we're humans of relational beings. So we need relationships, we need connections, and we need a sense of belonging. And the digital world is a way of connecting, and so that is a positive thing, especially as we all experienced during the COVID, where we were all isolated from each other. That served to keep the connections going, to keep us healthy to a big extent. So definitely the way we connected with friends, with family members, we still do this, is helpful to keep us with a sense of belonging and part of a group or a community that support us. Also, it's important to point out another positive thing where some forums or some groups, whether it's support groups, mental health groups, all sorts of groups could be a very helpful tool for to avoid isolation, to avoid the sense of loneliness, to avoid falling into depression. Some people can't make it face-to-face for different reasons, so this is a way of keeping them in connection with the world, even if it's a small world for them. I guess if we talk about negative, there's a long list of it. So I'm just going to point out a couple of things that could be highlighted here. It's sometimes it becomes a source of anxiety and depression, or symptoms of anxiety and depression when we start comparing ourselves with people on social media, and we all may be aware of how this impacts our view of ourselves, a negative perspective, especially with young people. Sometimes body image and other things could impact them in a negative way. With the many likes, with the many follows, that could be another part of comparison, and the results of it is avoidance and lack of effort to connect. So it becomes like a vicious cycle, a negative one that keeps people isolated, and eventually they feel the symptoms of depression and anxiety. I guess I'll stop here.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I think it's really good to see that there can be pros and cons to these kinds of things, and it can be difficult how isolating just being on your own in community can sometimes feel. So thank you for that. Micaiah, I'm going to let you take the second shot at this question.
Yeah. Oh wow. Sorry. Okay. I would agree a lot with Bassma on this too. I think I have a love-hate relationship with the digital world, which is kind of funny to say as someone who also sees a lot of benefits with the live streams for churches and ministry. But I mean, a part of the reason why I also love my job here is because I get to be in person, and I mean, on an everyday basis, get to just be a part of the lives of the students here. But in regards to just like the positives, I mean, the positive sides, again, within my own experience of someone who has lived all over Canada, and have grandparents out in BC and grandparents out here in Ontario, I have friends still from BC from high school that I've been able to stay in contact with because of social media or of like FaceTiming, other sources of digital connection. And so I have found the benefits in that, of being able to maintain and deepen these friendships to the point where I'm still in their lives, and when I am with them in person, which is still a very necessary thing, it's like almost as though time, or distance hasn't been been a factor, even though it has been. But those connections have remained because of the digital stuff, the digital connection. Again, there is also this feeling though of like, oh, I would like to be with them in this moment. If you see a photo get posted on social media. But I even look back to like the first, when I asked my parents if I could have Facebook, this was like, the fact that Facebook was the one that was my first social media or digital connection but I was moving from Montreal to BC and leaving a lot of my friends behind, and the reason why my parents let me have Facebook was because it kept me connected with that community that I got to live and experience life with. And so again, I think there's a lot of benefit with that, where it does continue these important connections that might have not happened prior. With even just when I reflect on live streaming with Bayview Glen, I started that during COVID. I started working on the live stream there, and I have continued to see the importance of that, of just being able to provide a space for people who might not be able to be in person, based off of situations. I mean, shift workers, my sister's a shift worker, or was a shift worker, and that was a really a hard thing. On Sundays, she couldn't be in person. So the live stream or the on-demand aspect of church was helpful. It allowed her to continue having these conversations with us as a family around the dinner table, because she didn't feel like she was out of it. So I see it in that. I see it in even just for those living in senior homes or other that might, again, not have the ability to come in person. There's that accessible opportunity given. And I think it's for the positive side of that, like, God has created us to be creative people. And so I also, as someone who loves to be creative with media, get to express God's creation in the midst of that, and get to also just help spread His word and bring people into relationship with Him through an online space. Again, I'm on the page of, like, it's not the only thing that needs to happen. I think in-person connection is so necessary, but there definitely is a lot of benefits to the online stuff too. So, yeah.
I benefited from the live stream a couple weeks ago. I was driving home from Ottawa on a Sunday morning when I probably should have been in church, but it was great because I was able to listen back to it later that day and be like, oh, that's what I missed. And I was able to have a conversation with my life group about what we had talked about. So I'm appreciative for it, but also I'm sure many others are as well. Dr. Franks, I'm going to give you first shot at the next question, but do you have anything you want to add for this one before we move on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And I think it was really helpful to hear on, I tend to focus more on the negative parts of the connections that I've seen. And this, so it was good to hear that there are positives as well. But I think what can happen is some of the negative aspects that can come along with that digital connection can easily emerge because we see the positive side of things, and that's why we begin to have an interest in these sorts of digital connections, and then the negative overwhelms us. And so I think one of the things I would suggest, I used to suggest this to my students in the Intro to Philosophy course, and so I'll give you two quick tips of how to push back against the negative side of the connection so that you can focus on the positive. And so, first tip, if you don't already, go buy an alarm clock, and so that you don't have to use your phone as your alarm. That allows you to take your phone and charge it at night on the other side of the room. That alone will change your life. I promise you, if you do this and one other one, the second one, I guarantee it'll change your life. So whenever you have your phone as your charger, as your alarm clock, and it's right next to you, it's very tempting, and we have all done it. We all probably did it this morning and last night, to look at your phone, and the last thing you do before you're scrolling and you're looking at people's lives that seem better than yours, and then you go to sleep. And then you wake up and you're scrolling and you're seeing people whose lives look like they're better than yours, and that's how you start your day. Or you're scrolling and you're seeing the world is falling apart, and that's how you go to sleep, and then you wake up, and yes, it's continuing to fall apart again. And so you begin and end your day in what is easily a very negative way. If you begin to charge your phone from across the room, then you now are laying your head down to sleep, and you're not looking at your phone, having your phone fall and hit you in your face because you fell asleep because you were scrolling so long. So that's tip one. Charge your phone from across the room so you don't look at it right when you wake up and right when you go to bed. Tip two is take out your device, and I wouldn't even mind if you do that as I'm answering this next question, because you could do that right now. Take out your device, go into the notification settings, and turn them all off, every single one of them. Turn off all of the notifications. News alerts, social media alerts, WhatsApp alerts, any of the other kinds of messaging alerts, turn them all off. If you do those two things for 1 week, I guarantee you that you will come back and report a positive change in your life. And if you do this and it doesn't change your life, please come and tell me. I will happily buy you a lunch. That's my guarantee. I'm willing to buy your lunch here on the cafeteria because I want to sit down and find out what is different about you than everybody else I know who's tried about this. Because something will be, if it doesn't make your life improve for the better, please, I want to get to know you in a deeper way, and I'm willing to buy your lunch to facilitate that. So those are two things. Charge your phone from across the room, turn off every single notification. Maybe you can let the rings come through in case somebody's calling you. But other than that, turn them all off. I guarantee your life you will find yourself using your phone for the positive things and not you'll say, you know what's going on with my brother who's across the country and his family. And you go and you open Instagram so you can see his photos, and then then you go to bed and it's charging over there and you go to sleep, right? So it's much easier to push back against the negativity if you don't have it in front of your face 24 hours a day. Okay. Awesome. That's my 2 tips.
No, great, thank you. Yeah, I did love your point of like almost everything in moderation, right? Things that start good can go bad if we're not careful. But I do, as we've all pointed out, there is a lot of good that can come from these things. And I mean, one of the things as an institution that we've benefited from since COVID especially, but even already before then, was the ability to do classes online. I'm sure some students would tell me that wasn't a benefit for them, but I know, again, we have some people online right now who are probably online students who don't set foot on campus, and they are able to do classes here because we have this online option, and they can build that community that way. So we're gonna actually shift gears for this question to the classroom for a minute. We are a university, that feels fitting. Dr. Franks, I'm gonna let you take point on this question, and then our other 2 panelists can chime in if they'd like afterwards. I'm gonna try again this thing. We'll see if it works. It does not look like our clicker is, I went too fast. Here we go. Question 2. Dr. Franks, in your experience both as a professor, but now even just in your leadership here at the school, how do you feel that classrooms can better leverage online community to add to the learning experience?
Yeah, I think that's the way I would really focus on, is the adding to the learning experience. I think for many of us, and some of the students who are still around maybe, or those who most recently graduated, when they hear online learning, they immediately think back to the COVID experience, which was very different because during COVID it wasn't optional. You just, guess what? You're an online student now, or you're not a student at all. Like it was foisted upon us. Thankfully, we're in a situation now where if you're choosing to engage in online learning, it's a choice. It's beneficial for you in some way. Maybe you live from across the campus or across the world and you want to take the course. Maybe it's just easier to fit within your work schedule or whatever else, since you're taking an online course. Whatever the case may be, it's a choice that you're doing that. And so I think that's much, and it puts everybody in the classroom in a better space, because now it's they're opting into it instead of just being foisted upon them. So how do you what I would say is I think it's great that we offer online courses, and I'm glad we do, and I hope we continue to offer more of them to provide more options and flexibility for our students. However, as Bassma was saying earlier, we are human beings. We're embodied beings, and we function, I think, we flourish best in community with one another. And the difficulty with online learning is it can be hard to develop that sense of community. And so one of the things you might, it might be surprising, but I was talking with the others before we started. As a professor, I would love to if I found out that as students went through my course, that the bulk, the entirety of their education happened, the learning happened whenever they were in my classroom listening to me just go on and on about Aristotle and Plato and all of these wonderful great thinkers, and that's where the bulk of the learning happened and occurred. And I wish that were the case because it would make me feel good about myself. But I know it's not the case because, one, I was a student and I went through that as well, and I knew that wasn't my experience. And then I talked with students about their experiences and graduates about their experience. And so much of the learning that actually you acquire during your educational experience comes outside of the classroom. It comes from having conversations with your classmates about the contest. What was Dr. Franks talking about? I have no idea what was going on there. And somebody else could come along and hopefully help you out, right? It's whenever you're talking with students, with your friends in the dorm rooms and in the cafeteria about what you're talking about in your class, and they're relating it to what they're talking about in one of their classes, and you're trying to test each other's ideas about how so much of learning happens in that sort of way. How do you do that in an online environment? And so here's where I would say, I think a lot of the responsibility for that, for really enhancing your learning experience in an online format, is going to be dependent upon you finding ways to connect with your fellow classmates and have a WhatsApp group, not with all your notifications turned on, so you can still keep those off, but starting a WhatsApp so that you can have those conversations, saying, hey, let's set a meeting outside of class period where we can, classmates can come and talk about the material together, have a study session together, because whenever in an in-person experience, all of those learning opportunities happen independent of the professor. The students that learn, that tell me or that I see that have learned the most are the ones that are looking for the opportunities to engage with the course material in ways outside of the classroom. But they're finding those ways on their own, like I said, through conversations. And so in an online experience, it's really easy to think, okay, it's an asynchronous course, so I'm going to watch the video. If it's going to be an hour-long video, and then I'm going to have a discussion board, and that's the end of my learning because it's an online course. Or maybe it's a synchronous course, and you say, okay, it meets for these 3 hours on this day of the week, and so I'm going to show up, I'm going to listen, and then that's my learning for the day. And if you do that, you might learn some things, but you're not going to benefit, I think, from the full community engagement that you could. But it's going to require finding ways to do that. So thankfully, you have faculty members, at least here at Tyndale, that are happy to do what they can to try and facilitate some of those sorts of things. But it's in my experience, whenever I've tried to facilitate those things for in-person groups, they're never well attended. It's whenever students are doing it on their own, because who knows when a student conversation is going to emerge about the nature of free will, like we can't, like it's, 12 o'clock, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're in your dorm rooms having these deep conversations. Like you have to look for ways to facilitate that, to create those opportunities amongst yourselves outside of the formal classroom. And so I guess that would be the main thing is, it's good that you can take these courses online, you can do those courses online, but because they're online, it's not going to in of itself completely duplicate the value of being in person. And so you have to find ways to try to create those opportunities to create similar versions of what you might do online. And that's where, thankfully, the technology has advanced in a lot of ways, where there's a lot of opportunities to create learning opportunities, engagement opportunities among your peers in the classroom in a digital way. So there are opportunities for that, but you have to look for them and be eager and willing to create them.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I know less so for classrooms, but something I've done with some of my friends who also live cross-country. We use things like Discord, really helpful app and program that allows you to do essentially like chat rooms and just get online, talk to each other. You can bounce in and out as you see fit. You don't have to get the phone call on WhatsApp because the study group suddenly wants to meet and you're like, I'm tired, I don't want to deal with this. But you can jump in as you want. So that's one I've always found helpful. But yeah, absolutely, some very very, very valuable things with building that intentional outside the classroom time with your peers. Micaiah or Bassma, anything to add on this before we move on?
Well, I guess I'm just going to highlight the word intentional.
Hmm.
So intentionality is a big piece here, and finding ways to connect is just a reflection of the motivation and the intentionality that I don't want to use the word should, but if I'm going to use it, it's for the benefits, on the long run benefits of the students, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both both of you guys. But yeah, as someone who's currently in a program that is hybrid, in person and online, but there is a lot of intentionality that does have to happen. I mean, I have a WhatsApp group with the cohort that I am with, and if we're always engaging with one another, which helps build that connection and helps even feel like if I have a question about a paper or I'm struggling with something, I can actually reach out to one of my classmates. So it builds that connection. And I'm somebody who learns outside of the classroom as well through those conversations. And so when I was a student during the COVID time in my 4th year and having to adjust from being in person to the online space, it was actually really, really difficult. And so whenever we were intentional with meeting after class and having conversations, that was always very fruitful. And so I would encourage anybody who's online, taking online classes, to take place in building those connections, whether again through digital means, but it is very beneficial in the learning and the able to apply even what you're learning into your life. I think you're able to hear from other people how they're taking what they're learning in class and using it in their life, and so that's something I would add.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think when I think back to the COVID days, the forum post was trying to simulate that a little bit, like this discussion between people, and pros and cons to that. I think there are some times where it works really well, and sometimes where it's a bit of more of a challenge. But I do think, making that time to bring the conversation outside the classroom can go a long way. Just being mindful of time, let's shift gears to our third question here. And I think the sense I've been getting from all your answers, at this heart of this question, is this idea that, online is good, but it sometimes feels like there's something missing when you can't actually be next to the person, where you can't actually talk to them face to face. And we've kind of talked around this a little bit, but I'm hoping in our last question we can really zero in on this idea of finding community in the face of not being face to face. So, and this one's for all three of you. I'll let you arm wrestle for who's going to go first. In what ways can your online communities help satisfy that inherent longing for face-to-face connection that we have? This one will be a little more positive. Where do we see the ability to satisfy that longing, even when it isn't maybe the way we would want it per se?
Okay, I'll go. All right. One of the things that we know about communication is the nonverbal communication. So it forms more than, I would say, 50% of the way we communicate. So having our cameras on gives some feedback to the person who's talking, or to making it meaningful, more meaningful than just texting or talking to turned off videos or screens. It's really important to communicate through our nonverbals, facial expression, tone of voice, body language. It's one of those ways that we can make it more beneficial, more meaningful. Another point is safety. So similar to what we will do face to face, if we can make the environment that we are meeting on, whether it's a Zoom call or a group chat or whatever it is, making it safe by not putting hurtful things or harmful things, that creates safety. And yeah, it allows to keep the connections going, to keep the communities going, to keep the building of that sense of belonging going. So, yeah. If I can put one more point, parasocial connections is, as much as it gives some sense of, I don't want to say identity, but connection in a way that, oh, I like that person, the way they think they're influencing influencers, that streamer, that blogger. All of these things are helpful to form some connection, but it's a one-way connection. And sometimes that gives the person who's following them a sense of satisfaction in the moment, but it robs them from the motivation to connect, to have a reciprocal connection with someone. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if years ago we would have worried a lot about parasocial relationships, but with the taking off of streaming, and I suppose even potentially, online services. I know this pastor because I listen to them every Sunday, but you don't, like, there can be that danger without us realizing it, right? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Bassma for mentioning the nonverbal aspect of things. And so if you're a student, be thoughtful about how your online presence in the classroom affects your instructor, your faculty member. And so I remember at times during COVID lecturing to a screen that had 18 sub screens that were supposed to be faces, and instead they were just black screens with a little white name. And it's the most demotivating thing in the world to not know if anybody's even listening to you, because they could all be napping. And I'd always laugh that every once in a while I would wrap up class about 10 minutes early, and there was always like 3 people still around at the very end. I'm like, oh, I guess everybody else knew to close because they were actually listening. So the just as a way of enhancing, and the other thing to note is that even if lots of other screens are black, you're turning yours on, or whatever they are in Teams. They used to be Zoom, and they were always black screens. But it's contagious in a positive way. Like, you're being willing to have your screen on and to be able to engage encourages your classmates to do that. And now you're not just helping your faculty member feel a little bit more motivated, but you're also, you're feeding off of your classmates as well. If you're looking and you can see confused faces on a lot of your other classmates, you might not be the only one, and you might say, hey, can you go over that again? It's helpful in a lot of different ways. And so, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I didn't think of that before. It's like, yes, please, keep them on. It's better for you, it's better for the instructor, it's better for your classmates.
I think a part of connection is also, what you're doing with the person. Again, you can be having a conversation on FaceTime, but then that's only going to last in the conversation. You might remember parts of it with that person, but it is, what are you doing? How are you actually participating in this life with this person? And so I think back to COVID, because that is when a lot of, again, there was that forced online connection. And it was after class, my friends and I, we were really missing each other. We were all in different spheres of Ontario, and we all had this one class, and the class was great. But again, we would get off the class and we would just be like, where's our friendship? Where's the building that happened here on campus? So we actually made it an intentional move that every week we would go to we'd drive after class to our closest coffee shop, and we would FaceTime one another in our cars in the parking lot. And it was just this, all of us were going to a coffee shop. We were intentionally setting up our phones in our car. We were all sitting in a parking lot. We were all chatting and and sometimes we lasted, a few hours. And And I remember that because it did satisfy a part of it where I was doing I was doing the same thing as somebody else. And so there was memories built in that, because, you know, you're driving and, you know, someone cuts you off and then you're able to tell your friend about it right away. You're like, oh, someone cut me off, or, you know, so there's these little moments that were able to be expressed because of that. And again, it was the same with, like, after having an event online, like, there was a moment where, like, there was 3 hours where actually Kyle, who was sitting here, was a part of that. There was like we were on Zoom for like 3 hours, like with 4 different people, again, just chatting about things, and it was great. But there is something about what are you doing in that moment. So like even going for a walk with somebody, like, hey, do you want to FaceTime and go for a walk together? Or even if it's just a call or something like that. There's something special about that, knowing that there's someone doing the same thing as you at the same time.
The other thing is, just as you were kind of explaining, sharing your story about going to the coffee shops, it occurred to me, like, I think in this question, that what I would highlight is the word help. These are a help. These are ways to help that desire for face-to-face connection. And so I think I would say, be realistic that even if you can do things like that with people, you know, that you may know from across the world, and you're meeting online, those are helps to it, but they're not ever going to be a replacement for it. And so be realistic about what digital connection can do for your own well-being. And so even if you have great online community that you've developed and you're doing these kinds of things and it's connect, you still, you know, get to know your neighbor, get to know the people at your church and in your community groups and those kinds of things. And it's never going to fully replace or satisfy that desire for face-to-face connection. Even if it can help, still look for other ways to build those embodied relationships. I think that it's really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all. I'm going to turn it over to this side of the room and the online community joining us. We do have a little bit of time for Q&A. Chad will come around with a microphone for anyone in the room who's got a question. For those online, we also have someone monitoring the chat, and we can read those out loud. So does anyone have anything about what we've talked about or other aspects of online community you wanted to ask about? Or perhaps even a story of where online community for you has actually been very beneficial. We've heard a couple of things so far, but...
Since no one else has a question, I have one. I'm curious if, from any of your experiences or your professional opinions, the idea that we can kind of like curate our community when we see something online. I know you kind of talked about it in terms of like seeing what you want. I know, like, when I was living in the States, surrounded by Phillies fans and Pirates fans, I was able to build a community of Blue Jays fans online. There's probably positives in that, and there's probably negatives in that, but are there any things that really stick out to you or make you really think about the idea of the way we curate our communities to maybe not be challenged or to feel secure in our own thoughts?
I think that's a great question, and I think you point out something that's like, most people are aware that we are maybe just a little bit more of a polarized society now than we were 10 years ago. And I suspect this is why. If you are a staunch conservative, you can go all day long and read all that you want. It's continuing to feed and endorse and embrace your reality. If you're a staunch liberal, you can do the same thing, and you can go your entire life essentially without ever being aware that people might see things in a different sort of way because you've curated the experience. And it's also helpful that, you know, like you were saying, you know, I am a baseball fan, and I can go through my day online and not interact with a bunch of Jays fans. It's all Rangers fans, and I love it. It's amazing. But there are different opportunities where I got to come in and have a meeting with Sharon, and she is going to tell me, you know, about why I've made a terrible mistake for not switching allegiances. So you do, even in those cases, there's ways where there are opportunities for pushback. But I do think in like, especially in the realm of politics in particular, this is an extremely difficult problem that you have to you go back to the intentionality that you talked about prior to this. You have to be very intentional to look for ways. It's kind of like a giant exercising confirmation bias. It's like, hey, this is what I thought, and guess what? All of these other people think the same thing, so I must be right. And so you have to look, we talk about this in critical reasoning, you have to go out of your way to look for disconfirming evidence, and that's never fun. And so, visit a website from a magazine that you wouldn't normally subscribe to and see how things are, be attentive. Whenever you're in person, try to find people that might disagree with you. That, especially at a university, it shouldn't be that hard. We should have a lot of people that disagree with a lot of things, and we should be open to having those conversations, those disagreements. But I think there's a lot of benefits to it, but there are some certain challenges to be mindful of. Yeah, that's helpful.
I would also say too, I guess it's really easy to judge somebody based off of what they're posting on social media, and that can also add to that polarizing thing where you're immediately like, oh, I'm never gonna have a conversation with this person because they believe in this and all that. But that again, it creates more of that polarizing versus the unity that even God calls us to live in. And so when we're thinking about social media, we're reading posts or seeing friends posts, like recognizing that what they're putting out there might not actually be fully who they are. There might be more to it, and not just judge people, and even like I think it's also be mindful of what you on social media, what you're presenting to, because you could be also presenting a falsified idea of you in that way that people are like, okay, no, I'm not going to talk to this person or create that. So there is that too that can come into this, that people can be very blinded by just, oh, this person's commented this or said, and again, that is a part of like what they would believe, but it's not all of who they are.
Yeah, I will just add to what is mentioned that whatever we post, we cannot take it back. So keep that in mind as we trod this open world, that whatever we say on social media is important to represent who we are as Christians, without hurting, without engaging in conversations that will not go anywhere sometimes. It's just for the sake of debate and proving my point. It's not helpful. I like what you said as well, that we don't look at people through what they are presenting as that is who they are. We all have our biases, we all have our ways of thinking, and that doesn't, when we see something different, that doesn't mean that this person is wrong and I'm right. That might be a point, yes, but that doesn't mean that this person as a whole is a wrong person. I am as a whole a right person. So keeping those points in mind as we interact through social media will make it a better place to communicate and to connect.
I also think it's interesting because there's the flip side of this where some people are going to be anonymous. They're gonna hide behind their username or their gray screen on Zoom. If you don't see me, then I can say maybe a little more bluntly what I'm feeling. So I know that doesn't quite speak to the question per se, but I think there's an element of that where that anonymity can embolden people to say things they might not have otherwise, even if it is being a different baseball fan. So, perfect. Go ahead, Dean Sweetman.
I was listening on CBC Radio. Yes, I listen to radio. A couple of days ago, and they were saying there was an interesting social experiment that was happening in Toronto. And the person framed it as asking this question: are we shaping our algorithms, or are our algorithms shaping us? And what they were going to do is they invited 50 people, strangers all, to a pub in Toronto with their phones or iPads to share what was on their Instagram, X, and TikTok feeds, so they could share it with each other, so that people would be aware of how profound the echo chamber is in their lives, and what they think might actually be an idiotic perspective is only idiotic because of how we have been ingrained within our echo chamber. It was an interesting experiment. Yeah. Just thought I'd push that out there.
Yeah, thank you. Just walking to the other side of the room for another question. Thank you for sharing that, Dean Sweeten.
Thanks, everyone. I wanted to talk about how unrealistic our posts are in terms of reflecting what our entire lives are. So social media is not going anywhere, and we like to post because we like to share, and I think we all have, for the most part, good intentions in starting it. From your perspectives, when it comes to being a professor, a student, a psychotherapist, what suggestions do you have for people who are going to post, how to do it in a healthy way so that we're not hurting others, so that we're not setting ourselves up for being hurt? Any kind of, not just necessarily do's or don'ts, but what is a healthy way of sharing things about my life where I'm not misleading people or even trying to kind of make myself think that my life is different or better than it is?
One thing that comes to my mind is don't use all of the fancy filters that make you look better than you are. Like, be real about this is who I am. I'm a lot heavier post-COVID than I was before COVID, so I'm not going to slim down on Instagram, right? Just be real about that. But my wife and I, we have this conversation quite a bit as well, where, as we've kind of moved along, especially with kids in the picture and those kinds of things, whenever we do things and we're excited about things and something cool has happened, it's like, what's the purpose of why we want to share this, and who are we sharing it with? And so I think it could be really worthwhile to begin with having a serious thought about who you're sharing with and why. If you are starting a company, well, you probably want to share with as many people as you can because you're trying to grow your company. But if it's your own personal account, do you really need to have complete strangers see what you're doing on vacation? Or, that's maybe a different reason for posting than versus like, I want my family members to see, oh, look what we're doing. Like they're excited about this. Like you would, show them, it's like the modern day equivalent of getting out the slideshow, the projector, it's look what we did on our vacation. Hopefully it's a little more enjoyable than that. But I think that would be a starting point, is be realistic about it. The other thing in terms of health, and this isn't necessarily like posting pictures and those kinds of things, but just online interaction. We've all, I think, either been a part of or at least seen, somebody posts something about some political topic, and then there's a comment, and then it's like, wow, if you guys spent that much time on your studies, you would be doing a lot better, And so, how do you avoid that? So one of the things I've done actually, and I've never really, I don't know if I did this intentionally or not, but I've recognized that I've done this over the last probably a couple of years now, and it's really helped my level of productivity stay up. Like if somebody posts something and I want to push back a little bit, I'll respond, but you're going to get one of those from me a day. Like if 1,000 people respond and they don't like what I said, I'm not going to go in and respond to all of them. You're going to get one response from me a day. And what I've seen in my own experience is over time, the level of conversation stays a lot higher because it's not the quick back and forth. And so it allows you, it keeps temperatures down, like it's those quick responses that we always regret. Every once in a while you might have a really thoughtful response that later you regret. But it's not as common as like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, And if you're only responding once a day, you're going to be a lot more thoughtful in that response. And so it's a different level of that interacting with people in a sort of maybe a healthier way. But that's something I've found. Those are things I've found in my life that's been helpful for me at least. But maybe others aren't as quick as I had been. But I don't know.
Well, I guess adding to what you mentioned, Paul, it's how many quick responses or likes do I add to a photo or a comment that someone is posting, and because I did this, I'm expecting them to do the same thing when I post something as well. So we keep engaging in something that really might hurt others on the same platform that are part of this, as well as it's kind of meaningless in a sense when we keep thinking about really what's the purpose of what we're doing here. Is being famous, being satisfying, my need for being recognized or liked. Is that what I'm trying to achieve? So back to the question that Dr. Poole said, it's like, what's the purpose of me putting this or posting this online? What do I want to achieve through this?
Yeah, I think when I just reflect on my own like social media journey, if that's a thing. At the beginning, it was definitely, I mean, social media now gets bombarded with so many other things, and you don't see your friends on it very much anymore. But there is this little tab at the top that says like following, and I'll click that, and usually that will be actually mostly like friends or people. I've also put like my really close friends on I've put their profile as like a close friends one that I actually can just go on to another feed that just shows my friends. So then I don't get sucked into all of the other parts of social media that are just more doom scrolling. But I think it goes back to that intentionality piece too of like I remember when I first started, it was like, oh, you wanted to post as much as you can, and like, you know, it was a popularity thing in high school where like who has the most likes, and then there were these rumors of like this person's buying followers, this person's buying likes, and it was like again this very toxic like, and there was a lot of falsified. People were seeing people just in a false light, and I have started to kind of. I don't post very often on social media, but when I do, I ask myself those questions, and usually it's actually like sometimes I'll post like once a month. Even so, I don't even do that. Like I think I went on like a 3-year hiatus where I didn't post anything. But either way, it's like when I am wanting to post, it's actually me reflecting on my own life too, and something that I have actually noticed when I post. I'm like, I look back at these things. They're memories that I want to hold and I want to cherish, and they're not about what I want other people to see necessarily. It's more so, this is my life. This is what my month looked like. This is what I'm grateful for. I'm thankful for the people that I got to see. I'm thankful for the conversations I was able to have. And so I view it more of like maybe of a journal in some ways. It is more public, but it's things that I'm grateful for. So I place it more in that way, and not instead of trying to post something and be like, oh, I think this person's gonna like this, so I'm gonna put this photo in my carousel of things. So that would be more on that, the personal side on that.
I do want to be mindful that classes restart again in a few minutes, so we'll probably wrap it up here. Panelists, thank you so much. This, as we know, is part of our Prayer and Wellness Week here at Tyndale. So even though this was focused on digital wellness, the conversation doesn't need to end here. So if you do have questions about these topics, if you have questions about the Wellness Center, Bassma's here and can always answer. If you want to talk to somebody, they can help you out. Or connect with your online community as well. We know that there can be good stuff that happens there, and you can have those conversations that you need to. But that is all for today. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you next time. Take care, all.